The diplomat had been assigned a mission he thought would be simple. His task was to learn about humanity. He had heard many stories about the humans, how they were a young and aggressive species, always fighting and building powerful weapons. But nothing had prepared him for what he saw when he arrived on Earth. The moment he stepped off the spaceship, he noticed something unusual. The planet was peaceful, yes, but the atmosphere was tense. He was greeted by friendly humans, but their eyes always seemed to glance over his shoulder as if they were watching for something he couldn't see. It felt as though every human was prepared for something. But what? As he traveled through cities, he saw humans building things, massive ships, towering walls, and strange machines. They were not just tools for work, but tools for war. He had expected to find a society focused on progress, peace, and science, but instead, he found a species obsessed with preparation for battle. There was something more to this planet than met the eye. The diplomat's curiosity grew stronger each day. He asked questions about the humans' history, their ways of life, and their intentions. The humans answered him, but their words were often vague and incomplete. He was told that their history was one of struggle, but no one seemed eager to explain what that struggle had been. Some spoke of the ancient wars, of a time when their people had been enslaved, but no one went into detail. It was as if they were hiding something, a truth too dangerous to reveal. His interest deepened when he visited a military base. He had expected to see advanced technology, of course, but what he saw went beyond his understanding. He watched as soldiers trained with weapons of unimaginable power. These weapons were not just for defense, they were for total destruction. The soldiers moved with calm precision, their faces unreadable. There was no fear in their eyes, only determination. They seemed ready for something, but what? The diplomat questioned the officers in charge, but their responses were always the same. We are prepared for any threat. We must be ready for anything. Their answers left him with more questions than before. What were they preparing for? And why was there such a sense of urgency? One evening, while walking through the streets of a major city, the diplomat overheard a conversation between two humans. They were talking in hushed tones, but his keen ears caught their words. "It's happening soon," one said. "We need to be ready." The other replied, "I know, but they have no idea what's coming." The diplomat's heart raced. What were they referring to? What was about to happen? He decided to visit a human historian. He hoped that someone with knowledge of the past could shed light on what was really going on. The historian's office was filled with old books, dusty relics, and strange artifacts. When the diplomat asked about humanity's history, the historian hesitated. After a long silence, the historian spoke. "Humanity's past is full of bloodshed and struggle. We've fought battles for survival, but we've learned one thing: never show weakness. Never let anyone see your fear." The diplomat was intrigued, but still confused. "But what is it that makes humans so strong?" he asked. The historian leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "You may think we are weak, but that is a mistake. The power of humanity lies not in our strength alone, but in our ability to survive against all odds. We have been tested, and we have endured. If you think you can understand us through our weapons, you are wrong. Our real power lies in something else, something you can't see." The diplomat was left with a feeling of unease. He had come to Earth expecting to find a species that relied on their strength and weapons for survival. But what he was learning didn't fit the picture. There was something more, something hidden beneath the surface. He spent the following days watching the humans more closely. They were friendly, yes, but there was a quiet strength about them. It was in the way they carried themselves, in the way they spoke to one another. There was a sense of unity, a sense that no matter what happened, they would stand together. The diplomat began to understand that the humans were not just a race of warriors. They were survivors, and that made them even more dangerous than he had imagined. He could feel it now. Something was brewing on Earth, something that would change everything. The humans weren't just preparing for war. They were preparing for something far bigger, something that would shake the galaxy to its core. But what was it? The diplomat knew he had to find out. As he sat in his quarters later that night, he stared out the window at the distant mountains. A strange feeling washed over him. He had come to Earth to learn about its people, but now he was starting to feel like the humans were teaching him something he wasn't ready to understand. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had stumbled onto something dangerous. The humans were not what they seemed, and their true nature was more than he could grasp. Yet, deep inside, he knew he had to find out. He had no choice but to keep searching. He had to uncover the truth. The diplomat's curiosity had led him here, and now he knew there was no turning back. He was on the edge of discovering something that could change everything. But would the truth be too much for him to handle? Or would he find the answers he was looking for? As the sun set on Earth, the diplomat couldn't help but wonder, what makes humans so dangerous? And what was the truth they were hiding? The diplomat's curiosity led him to the heart of Earth's most guarded archives. Deep within the underground vaults, tucked away in a facility shielded by layers of secrecy, he discovered records and manuscripts that held the key to the mystery he had been chasing. The humans had carefully hidden their past, not out of shame, but because the truth was too powerful to be revealed easily. The air in the archive was thick with the scent of old paper and dust. The diplomat's fingers traced the edges of ancient books as he opened one, its pages fragile and yellowed with age. What he read next shook him to the core. Humanity's past was not the simple tale of survival he had been led to believe. It was something far darker. The records told of a time when humans were not the dominant species on Earth. They had been enslaved by a powerful alien race, creatures of unimaginable strength and technology. These beings ruled over the humans, with cruelty and oppression, forcing them into labor camps, stripping them of their dignity, and using them as tools for their own conquest. But the humans had not accepted their fate. As the diplomat read on, he discovered that humanity's resistance had not been a matter of hope or ideals. It had been a matter of survival. They had fought back, not with the might of armies or advanced technology, but with sheer willpower and resourcefulness. And in doing so, they had discovered something that would change the course of their history forever. Hidden deep within Earth's core, the humans had uncovered ancient, alien technology that had been buried for eons. It was a power that not only allowed them to fight back, but to evolve into something more than they had ever been. With this power, humanity was able to rise up and break the chains of their oppressors. They fought with unmatched fury, using weapons and tactics that even the most advanced alien species could not foresee. The diplomat continued reading, his mind racing with the implications of what he was uncovering. The humans had not only defeated their alien overlords, they had taken their technology and adapted it to their own needs. They had developed weapons that could level entire cities, ships capable of traveling faster than light, and technologies that were light years ahead of anything the diplomat had ever seen. But there was more. The humans did not stop at defense. They used this power to expand their reach beyond Earth. They traveled to distant planets, establishing colonies and laying the groundwork for a future empire. Their thirst for freedom had turned into an insatiable desire for dominance. The diplomat now understood why humans were so heavily armed. They were not just defending their planet, they were preparing for something far grander, the reclaiming of what they believed was rightfully theirs. The diplomat felt a chill run down his spine. He had been sent to learn about humanity, but now he was learning about something far more dangerous. Humans were not just survivors, they were conquerors. And they had been waiting for the right moment to strike. As he dug deeper into the records, the diplomat came across a shocking revelation. Humanity had been quietly assembling a fleet, preparing for the day when they would no longer be content with merely defending themselves. They had already begun making plans to wage war on the galaxy, to reclaim what was lost during their time of enslavement. The diplomat's mind struggled to comprehend the scale of what he was learning. He had thought that the humans were peaceful, mild, creatures who were content to live in isolation. But now he realized that they had been biding their time, waiting for the moment when they could unleash their full power. He quickly found himself questioning everything he had been taught about humanity. The humans had hidden their strength not out of fear but out of strategy. They knew that if the galaxy ever learned of their true potential, they would be seen as a threat, and their rise would be met with resistance. So they kept their weapons hidden, their plans secret, and their true intentions concealed. The diplomat couldn't help but wonder if he had made a mistake in coming here. What had he uncovered? What was humanity truly capable of? He had arrived expecting to meet a race of defenseless creatures who needed guidance, but now he saw them as a force that could topple empires. If they were ever to reveal their full power, the galaxy would be in danger. His thoughts were interrupted by the sudden arrival of a human officer who seemed to appear out of nowhere. The officer spoke calmly, but there was an air of urgency in his voice. "You're looking for the truth," he said, "but be careful what you find. Some things are better left hidden." The diplomat was taken aback by the officer's words. Was this a warning? Had the humans already known that he was digging into their past? He tried to probe further, but the officer's expression remained cold and unreadable. There was no room for questions. The officer simply turned and left, leaving the diplomat alone with his thoughts, and with the dark truth he had uncovered. As the diplomat sat there in the quiet of the archive, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had stumbled onto something he wasn't supposed to know. Humanity's history was not just one of survival, it was one of power, vengeance, and conquest. And now, that power was awakening. What was it that the humans were planning? Was this the calm before the storm? And if so, who would be caught in the crossfire? The diplomat's mind raced with possibilities. The galaxy would never be the same again. The humans were not just a race to be understood. They were a force to be reckoned with, and they had just begun to show their true strength. The diplomat knew that he could no longer remain neutral. He had uncovered something far too dangerous, something that could change everything. Now, he had to decide. Would he warn the galaxy, or would he stand by as humanity's fury was unleashed? The diplomat's heart raced as he left the archive, the weight of what he had learned pressing down on him like an unbearable burden. The truth was no longer something he could ignore. Humanity, a species that once appeared to be weak and vulnerable, was far more dangerous than he could have imagined. He had uncovered their secret, a history of survival and vengeance, weapons of unimaginable power, and a plan to reclaim the galaxy. He had spent weeks on Earth, learning about the humans, but now it seemed as if he had barely scratched the surface. The pieces of the puzzle had come together, but the final image was still elusive. What had they planned? What were they preparing for? Determined to learn more, the diplomat sought out a higher-ranking human official, someone who could give him the answers he was desperately searching for. He was introduced to General Marcus Trask, a man known for his calm demeanor and unshakable loyalty to his people. The general had been a key figure in humanity's rise, and the diplomat knew that he might hold the answers to the questions that had plagued him. The general's office was a stark contrast to the diplomat's surroundings, cold, efficient, and built for purpose. The walls were adorned with holographic displays of star maps and military strategies, and the floor was polished to perfection. Trask sat behind a large desk, his hands folded neatly in front of him as the diplomat entered. "Diplomat," Trask greeted, his voice calm but firm. "I hear you've been digging into our past. It's not a topic we discuss openly, but I suppose it's time you learned the full truth." The diplomat took a seat across from the general, his mind racing. "I've learned a lot," he said, cautiously. "But there's something I still don't understand. What is it that humanity is truly preparing for? You're not just defending Earth. You're building something bigger, something far more dangerous." The general's eyes narrowed, but his expression remained stoic. He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "What we're preparing for isn't just a war, it's the restoration of humanity's place in the galaxy. We've been hiding in plain sight for far too long, but that ends now." The diplomat listened intently, trying to keep his composure. "Restoration? From what? Trask hesitated, as if considering how much he should reveal. Finally he spoke, his voice laced with cold determination. We were enslaved, and now we've learned that the galaxy's rulers, the ones who enslaved us, are still out there, waiting, and we will not let them continue their reign. Humanity has endured enough. We're going to take back what's ours, and we will make sure no one ever threatens us again. The diplomat's mind spun. The humans weren't just planning for survival, they were planning for conquest. They weren't preparing to defend themselves from outside threats. They were preparing to strike, to reclaim the stars from those who had oppressed them for so long, and they had the power to do it. Do you understand now? General Trask asked, his eyes piercing the diplomat. We're not just a species of soldiers or diplomats. We're a species of survivors, and will do whatever it takes to ensure that we never become slaves again. The diplomat sat back, stunned by the revelation. He had come to Earth expecting to learn about a peaceful, evolving species, but instead, he had uncovered the beginnings of an intergalactic power ready to wage war. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for centuries, quietly building weapons, amassing fleets, and perfecting their strategies. They had been waiting for the perfect time to strike. But the galaxy won't understand, the diplomat said, his voice low. If they learn what you're planning, they will unite against you. You'll be seen as a threat. Trask's lips curled into a faint smile, but there was no humor in it. Let them come. Let them try to stop us. The galaxy has underestimated us for far too long. They think we're just a bunch of primitive apes with weapons. They'll soon learn that we're much more than that. The diplomat felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The humans weren't just armed. They were prepared for something much greater. They weren't just preparing for a war of defense. They were preparing for a war of domination. And with their advanced technology and their fierce determination, they might very well succeed. He stood up slowly, his mind racing with the enormity of what he had learned. The fate of the galaxy was no longer in the hands of the peaceful, noble races he had once believed in. It was in the hands of humanity, a species that had been broken and enslaved only to rise again, stronger and more dangerous than ever before. As the diplomat left the general's office, he felt the weight of his discovery press down on him, like a leaden weight. Humanity was not what he had expected. They were not just a species to be pitied. They were a species to be feared. The galaxy had underestimated them for too long, and now it seemed that humanity was about to make its mark on the stars. The diplomat knew that he had a choice to make. He could warn the galaxy, but would anyone believe him? Or would humanity's storm come crashing down, leaving destruction in its wake? He had uncovered the truth, but the question now was, what would he do with it? As he stared out into the vastness of space, he couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity was at the center of it all. And the diplomat realized, with a cold certainty, that the truth had been revealed. Humanity was not just a species to be understood. It was a force that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. The diplomat spent the following days in isolation, his mind whirling with the revelations he had uncovered. The truth about humanity was too vast, too unsettling to process, all at once. He had been sent to Earth to learn about its people, to understand why they were so heavily armed, but now he knew far more than he had ever expected. He had uncovered their dark past, how they were once slaves, how they had risen from oppression, and how they had hidden their true strength for centuries. The diplomat knew that if this information became public, the galaxy would never be the same. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that humanity's plans were already in motion. Their fleets were being built, their weapons perfected, and their resolve hardened. The galaxy would soon face a choice: adapt to humanity's, rise or be crushed beneath it. The diplomat was torn. He had sworn to remain neutral, to report the facts as he found them. But how could he remain neutral when the truth was so explosive? He had been sent here to observe, to understand. But now, he saw the human desire for vengeance and power, It was clear that they would stop at nothing to reclaim what they believed was rightfully theirs, and in doing so, they might ignite a war that would devastate everything. He sat alone in his quarters, staring out the window at the stars. Earth's lights sparkled below, and the ships in orbit gleamed like silent sentinels. He had witnessed the beginning of something far larger than a simple human struggle. This wasn't just about freedom anymore. It was about domination. Humanity's hunger for power was like a wildfire, and it was spreading fast. The diplomat paced the room, his thoughts racing. Should he warn the galaxy? Would anyone believe him? He knew that if he did, there would be consequences. The human race would not take kindly to an outsider exposing their plans. But if he remained silent, he would be complicit in the coming storm. Humanity's war machines were already moving, and there was no turning back. The weight of his decision pressed heavily on his chest. He thought about the peaceful civilizations he had known, the ones who had trusted him to maintain order and stability. If humanity succeeded, everything would change. No more fragile alliances. No more peace. The galaxy would belong to them, and those who resisted would be destroyed. The diplomat could already see it. The fragile peace of the galaxy shattering as humanity's might rained down on the unsuspecting. But as the diplomat continued to struggle with his decision, something unexpected happened. He was called to a meeting by one of Earth's highest-ranking officials, General Marcus Trask. The diplomat was confused. He had already met with Trask, and there was no reason for another meeting. But the urgency in the message was clear. Something was happening. When he arrived at the general's office, Trask was waiting for him. The general's face was hard, as usual, but there was a glimmer of something else in his eyes, something that resembled concern. "Diplomat," Trask said, his voice measured but serious. "We know you've learned the truth, we know you've seen our plans, but there's something you need to understand. This isn't about conquest, it's about survival." The diplomat raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "Survival? After all I've seen, I can't believe that's all this is. This is about power, about domination." Trask stood up, walking slowly to the window as he looked out at Earth. "Yes, it's about power, but it's also about a past that humanity can never forget. We were slaves once, and now we have the power to ensure that never happens again. The galaxy needs to understand that. We're not looking for war. We're looking for peace. But peace on our terms. The galaxy can either accept our strength or it can fight us, and if they choose to fight, we will win." The diplomat felt a chill run down his spine. He had expected this. He had known that humanity's rise would not be without conflict. But now, hearing it from Trask himself, it felt different. There was no denying it. The humans were no longer the meek, defenseless species the galaxy had once thought them to be. They were a force to be reckoned with. "We've been silent for too long," Trask continued, his voice heavy with resolve. "But the silence is over. We've built our fleets, we've mastered the weapons, and we're ready. The galaxy will have to deal with us, one way or another." The diplomat stood frozen, the weight of Trask's words settling in. The truth was undeniable now. Humanity wasn't just a rising power. They were the future, and the future was armed, dangerous, and determined. "I didn't come here to choose sides," the diplomat said, his voice quieter than before. "I came to observe. But now I see that I can no longer remain neutral." Trask turned to face him, a hard smile crossing his lips. "Then you understand, don't you? This isn't just about Earth anymore, it's about the entire galaxy. You can warn them if you wish, but I doubt anyone will believe you until it's too late." The diplomat's mind raced. Was it already too late? Had humanity's plan already gained momentum beyond the point of no return? If he spoke out, he might spark panic and fear across the galaxy. But if he remained silent, he would be complicit in the chaos that was about to unfold. He had uncovered the truth, and now he had to decide how to act. Should he warn the galaxy and risk alienating the humans he had grown to understand? Or should he trust humanity's resolve and wait for the storm to break? Either way, the galaxy would never be the same. As the diplomat left Trask's office, he felt an unfamiliar sense of dread. Humanity was no longer the weak species he had once thought. They were powerful, focused, and ready to take what they believed was theirs. And now he had to decide. Would he be a witness to their rise, or would he fight to stop it? The stars beyond Earth's orbit looked peaceful, but the diplomat knew the storm was coming, and when it arrived, nothing would be the same again. The roaming. Diplomat's thoughts raced as he stood on the balcony, gazing at the distant stars. The galaxy had always seemed so vast, so untouchable. Yet now it felt smaller, more confined, on the verge of being changed forever. Humanity was no longer just another species to be catalogued in the galactic archives. They were the force that could reshape everything, and the diplomat had learned this truth firsthand. His mind flickered back to his conversation with General Trask. The general's words echoed in his thoughts, each one sinking deeper into his consciousness. We will win. The diplomat had never imagined that the future of the galaxy would be so heavily intertwined with humanity's rise. He had believed their strength was a mere defense mechanism, a way of keeping their enemies at bay. But now, he understood. Humanity wasn't just preparing for war. They were preparing to control the future. The diplomat felt a growing unease in his chest. He had been a neutral observer, someone sent to gather information and report back. But now the choice was no longer so simple. He knew the truth, and that truth had the potential to tear apart everything he had worked for, everything the galaxy had worked for. What would he do with this knowledge? What could he do? The diplomat paced back and forth in his quarters, his mind grappling with the gravity of his situation. He had two choices, each with consequences far beyond his comprehension. He could expose humanity's plans to the galaxy, warning them of the coming storm, but that would create panic. Would the galaxy be able to unite against humanity, or would they be doomed to fall apart under the weight of their own fear? Could humanity be stopped? Or would it trigger a war that could spiral out of control, dragging countless innocent lives into the chaos? The other option was to remain silent, to accept that humanity was going to take what they believed was theirs, and to let the chips fall where they may. He could continue to observe, passively watching as the pieces of this massive puzzle shifted into place. But what would that make him? A passive observer of history, standing aside as the galaxy was reshaped by a species he had once considered weak? Could he live with that? He had seen the signs. Humanity's fleet was already gathering, their weapons ready. They were preparing to strike, and when they did, there would be no going back. The galaxy would either bow to their might or be shattered in the attempt to resist. But was that resistance even possible? The diplomat couldn't help but remember the fear he saw in the eyes of the humans when they spoke of their past. They had been enslaved, oppressed, and nearly destroyed, but they had risen up not just to survive, but to thrive, to rebuild. And now, they were poised to ensure that no one would ever have the power to oppress them again. The diplomat walked over to the window and stared at the bustling city below. Humanity was no longer the species of hope and compassion he had once believed. They had turned that hope into something far more dangerous, a burning desire to reclaim what was lost, to take what was rightfully theirs. They had the power. They had the will. And now, they had the weaponry to make their vision a reality. What if they were right? What if this was the only way to secure their future? Could the galaxy afford to let them rise unchecked? Or was the diplomat simply too afraid of change? Too unwilling to accept that the galaxy's balance was about to shift? A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was the same human officer who had warned him earlier about delving too deep into humanity's past. The diplomat had learned to trust his instincts, and his instincts told him that this officer knew more than he was letting on. "Diplomat," the officer said, entering the room with a grave expression. "General Trask has requested your presence. There's something you need to see." The diplomat followed the officer in silence, his mind still spinning with the weight of his decision. As they walked through the corridors, the officer didn't speak again. They arrived at a secure chamber, and the door slid open to reveal a holographic display of star maps and fleet movements. Humanity's fleet was growing and their reach was expanding. stretching across the galaxy. "We're not hiding anymore," the officer said quietly, his voice serious. "The time has come. The war is inevitable, and we need you to choose a side. You've seen what humanity can do. You've seen the power we wield. Now you have to decide if you want to stand with us or if you're going to try and stop us." The diplomat stood in front of the display, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. Was this really happening? Was he being forced to choose sides in a conflict that could change everything? He thought of the peaceful species in the galaxy, those who had trusted him to protect their interests, to maintain order. Would they see humanity's rise as a necessary evil? Or would they fight to the end to protect their way of life? And if he chose to warn them, would they listen? Would they prepare in time? Or would they be swept away by humanity's overwhelming might? "Choose carefully," the officer said, his voice colder now. "There are no more neutral parties. The galaxy will be divided. The question is, where will you stand?" The diplomat's heart was heavy with the realization that his actions would shape the galaxy's future. If he warned the galaxy, he would be betraying the trust humanity had placed in him. But if he remained silent, he would be complicit in a conflict that could consume everything he had ever known.